You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. It's 7:37 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I thought tonight what we would talk about is the way that attachment conditioning affects your employment experience. Because one of the things, we remember Freud, he said that the purpose of life is to love and to work. And one aspect is certainly to work. And most of us are in a position where we have to provide some support for our essentials. In Buddhism, we talk about that as food, shelter, clothing, and medicine as the essentials, and how that may affect you in terms of the kind of employment that you seek. I like to talk about it as primary and secondary exploration. Secondary exploration is the gathering of time, energy, and resources to support yourself, and primary exploration is the pursuit of meaning in life. Obviously, if you don't do enough secondary exploration, if you need to provide yourself with resources, then the primary exploration suffers. And ideally, there's a balance between the secondary exploration, which is the gathering of resources, and the primary exploration. And if you get it right, each day, part of the day is spent pursuing meaning, and part of the day is spent pursuing resources so that you can successfully explore for meaning. And there's a lot of different ways that that plays out, and a lot of different ways in which our society values these things. If you look at it, particularly in the last 40 years or so, there's been an inordinate amount of pressure on the bottom 90% of society, and a gradual restriction of resources over and over again through the different policies that our government has had. So you might find yourself in that category where the gathering the time, energy, and resources is challenged because of the constraints of society, class, race, sex, uh, so on. But then we also have our attachment conditioning. As it turns out, resources also affect attachment outcome. People with more resources tend to have an advantage attachment wise to people that don't have resources. There's a greater strain on providing those basics: food, shelter, clothing, medicine, if the resources are more restricted. And the stress that that puts on the caregivers and their ability to respond in a sensitively attuned enough way. But we all have the attachment conditioning we all have the attachment conditioning that we have, and then we have to show up in the world and pursue the things that matter to us, and also the things that we have an ability to do. And then the workplace, or the market for trading labor for cash varies depending on what that skill set is. Capacity to explore, to really participate in the creation of value for different ways of making money is also a part of it. And I think really that's the way that you might begin to look at it. What is your capacity to explore, and how might that impact your ability to navigate the workplace? Um, and then what might you be looking for in terms of that? I work quite a bit with people in the tech industry, and what I notice is that people at the very top of the tech industry tend to be in the secure dismissing category, which means that they're good at exploring. And the people a couple of rows down from that in terms of the hierarchy tend to be preoccupied, which means they don't explore that well, but they are totally interested in taking on the exploration of somebody else and supporting that. And so you have these hierarchies of people who are good at exploring and then the people that fill in the actual task of doing the exploration, which serves them because they don't really explore very well. And then when you move out of the disorganized range into the disorganized range, really, you find people functioning in work that's um, sometimes wildly below what their capacity to do something is. And work situations that are adaptable to the reliability challenge that disorganized people have. Um, so how do you organize that in such a way that you understand what your capacities are and what interests you? I think it's unusual in our culture, given the way that it goes, that people can align their primary exploration, the primary search for meaning, with their uh, secondary exploration. Sometimes they align, and the thing that fascinates you and the thing that you want to do also has the capacity to be remunerative enough to support yourself in our culture, but often that isn't the case. So, how do you create a balance there, particularly when we have this sort of progressive 5 day work week? Do you know anybody who actually works a 5 day work week in this economy? Way back when, 1975, I moved to New York City, Manhattan, from Chicago, and looked around, and Lower Manhattan was pretty much at 40% occupancy at that time. So the storefronts were all filled, but the upper parts of the building weren't. And so you could actually find a place to live pretty cheaply. The going rate for loft space in Lower Manhattan at the time was 25 cents a foot. And so I got 1,400 square feet of loft space on Broadway and 11th for $174 a month, which created an economy of meaning in a way that's quite remarkable in the sense that you could work 2 days a week and cover your bills, which meant you had 5 days a week to pursue what was meaningful to you. And so if you look at the history of art in the West, that period in New York between, say, 1975 and 1982 was a flourishing of that because of the the economic requirements of the time. Of course, as soon as inflation hit, you may recall in the that late 70s period, it got up to about 15%, which was quite a staggering amount. Um, but maybe not if you had CDs because the interest rates are really high. uh, and then gradually the rents increased, and then the number of days that one had to spend gathering resources went from 2 days to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. And what comes from that need to work so much just for the satisfaction of secondary exploration is that the primary exploration takes a hit. So secure people, of course, are more oriented toward meaning, and so they tend to suffer less acquisition of material things. Dismissing people are very thing oriented, very stuff oriented. So you'll notice that dismissing people tend to gather the most resources, and helplessly preoccupied tend to be more in a supporting role in there. But if you look at organized attachment, all three of those groups, secure, dismissing, and helplessly preoccupied, tend to do about the same. I think in one of the studies I saw, dismissing people had a 3% higher net worth than the other two, but still within reason. So if you find yourself secure and you're more oriented toward meaning, you tend to balance better in the direction of meaning and gathering. And we, of course, then are in this cultural frame of what's valuable to us as a culture and what isn't valuable. And it really is remarkably different than when I was young because of this movement toward this, incredible inequality that we have now. It's actually considered immoral to have this level of inequality when I was growing up. The 50s was a kind of idealized age of everybody being able to pursue the basic level of support that they needed so that they could fulfill life, which was often depicted as a very heteronormative family, house, two cars, and a college education, at least in the class that I grew up in. Dismissing people, while they're good explorers, are often more oriented toward secondary exploration. So the primary exploration is set aside, which makes it a little bit easier for them to function in the business world than secure people because they're not, the absence of the primary meaning is less important. The acquisition of social position and power and remuneration is more important. And that's because they tend to be in a transactional, relational pattern. Secure people collaborate with each other in taking care of each other, and dismissing people tend to be transactional in that way. You do this for me, I do that for you, and it's one-on-one transaction at a time, rather than the collaborative effort for the whole care of somebody else. Um, which makes the business world uh, better suited to that because they don't have the obligation for meaning, and they also don't have the obligation for the meaning that other people might derive from the experience of their life. And they're good at figuring out what to do and what positions to take. They're good at exploring, and they can apply that to the business world. Helplessly preoccupied people, so organized, preoccupied people are very other oriented. And so they can really adapt well to the mission of the company, and they can really perform a role in the company doing well. And they can take value in that. Um, but it isn't a good replacement for meaning, but it is useful in that way. So that if you were actually organizing a business, you might think the upper tier will do a test and get the dismissing people to take those range because they can be utterly ruthless in making decisions for the business. And then we'll fill the middle ranks with preoccupied people who are very diligent in fulfilling their obligations and very oriented toward outside praise that would be useful to them. And we'll eliminate disorganized people who are so unreliable that they can't really show up and such a good investment. But if we flip it and begin to look at the experience that we have based on our attachment conditioning, of course, by the time you're a year old, you have a functioning attachment system, and then you navigate through life using that attachment system. 70% of us using the same attachment strategy that we had when we were a year old all through our lives without changing much. Might want to look at how we interact in the world of secondary exploration and how we might reorient that by attending to the attachment needs, or the attachment assets and deficits that have come from our um, family systems. If you're secure and you value relationships and you're oriented toward having relationships that then are supportive of your collaboration, your exploration, these collaborative relationships that support that, then it would make sense to begin to orient the work that you choose to do around some form of meaning, rather than it being completely divorced from meaning. That you clock in and you do your time, and then you clock out, and then you have the weekend or the evening when you're supposed to be able to pursue the things that are meaningful. But often work is so demanding and so energy depleting that the time off is really simply recuperating so that you can go back into the workplace and perform, which doesn't leave that space for exploration, for the pursuit of meaning. Christian,
George, forgive me for invoking such a foulness, but I
are
was
you going to
reading.
talk about the Harvard Business School?
No, even worse. I was reading something that apparently Elon Musk, in a fit of the kind of exploration that you could do at your most dismissive if you're very rich, supposedly is very good at an online video game, but actually he just pays a team of people to like play it around the clock so that he, like on his behalf, in a sort of bit of interpassivity, like maybe a kind of dismissive version of the Buddhist prayer wheel that kind of
Uh-huh.
prays for you. So that's one way you could explore, is just pay other
Other
people to
people to
explore
do
on
it,
your behalf.
which is fairly transactional, right? The dismissing people are very inwardly oriented, and they're they suppress the attachment system, they suppress awareness of their emotion, and they really operate on working models that they create internally. So the capacity to uh, uh, do that and not really distinguish between them doing that for you and you doing it is one of the features of the dismissing attachment strategy. Uh, the the accepting of no responsibility if it goes badly, and accepting of all of the responsibility if it goes well, is very typical of that. And that's a function of the idealization that dismissing people do. They learn very early to split out all of the negative, and all of that is split off, and they're idealizing. They only deal with the positive aspects of things, which, actually in terms of running a business is not necessarily um, the worst thing. um, I think is it Charlie Mueller, who was Warren Buffett's partner, said of Elon Musk that uh, he's overconfident, uh, but that uh, he wouldn't bet against him because you never can tell with overconfident people whether or not they can pull it off, which is one of the aspects of that dismissing character. They're overconfident uh, in their own ability, and it isn't really a reflection of that. Uh, but that inability to distinguish yourself from other people is uh, it's very ordinary in terms of attachment conditioning. You'd have to be empathetic. You'd have to really be able to see clearly yourself and to distinguish yourself from other people. which comes from that early attachment framework. None of us really have the capacity to self-reflect. We really know about ourselves from the reflection of our caregivers. And we learn this very early. The infant looking into the face of the caregiver, and the caregiver reflecting back to the infant the qualities of the infant, which we then use to construct a working model of ourselves. And so our perception of ourselves really depends on the accuracy of our caregivers' interpretation of us. And if our caregivers are wildly wrong in their calculation of us, it doesn't matter because we can't distinguish that. And we begin to construct these working models of ourselves based on the reflection, not what is actually there. And so that they wildly overvalue us in a way, attribute to us capacities that we don't really have. It doesn't mean we don't develop a working model based on that and imagine that we do. Or conversely, if they reflect to us that we're difficult and demanding and unpleasant, we still develop a working model based on that. It's in that secure dyadic experience that you get a reflection of that's more accurate to who you are. And as you develop over the course of time, the sensitively attuned caregiver, of course, recognizes what your capacities are, and they keep moving the goalpost out so that you are challenged. And the thing that really develops an authentic sense of confidence is the caregiver skillfully moving the goalpost out just within reach, so that each time you strive, you succeed, whereas they can completely crush that capacity for confidence by just moving the goalpost out of reach, so that you never succeed in the goal that you set. Or the neglecting side, of course, which is they don't set a goal at all. They don't really pay attention to what your development is, and you're left in that experience of never really being challenged. I would guess to be a national politician in this media environment, the more unfeeling you are, the better. And with the level of corruption that we have, which is also something that in my early life was unimaginable, that yeah, as our president-elect said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and there would be no consequences to that. Paraphrasing, I'm not exactly sure what the actual words were. So that's the environment. And then we have to bring our rickety old attachment strategy and somehow integrate into it in a way that then we can create for ourselves the life of meaning that is really this human condition that we're in. What I find so startling is how removed we have become from uh, the nature of the human condition in which we live. What is it? How much do you actually need in order for you to have the time to explore in a way that's meaningful and to have the capacity to support relationships that you can then express the things that you've found out in a way that is rewarding? That cycle of exploration, which is where you go out and try to figure out the things that matter to you, knowing that you have a secure base to return to. You get too flummoxed in the exploration, you can come rushing back, and that secure base will catch you and help you re-regulate, and then be really interested in what you found out and delight in the process of your exploration, and then encourage you to go back out and find out more. And in order for you to have that, really, all you have to do is be able to do that for somebody else, catch them when they need to be caught, and have genuine interest in the things that matter to them and what they're finding out. And as you develop the capacity to explore over a lifetime, get better and better at it and find out more nuance, more um, refined experiences. But of course, if you don't have that capacity, if the resources aren't available to you, if the time isn't available to you, then how do you do that? And as time progresses, if you're not engaged in exploration, of course, the skill of exploring doesn't develop. And the longer that that happens, or the more truncated it is, the less capacity that you have for deriving meaning from life. And then the sense of disappointment and the sense of despair that is so common in our culture, the way that it is, overtakes you. And we can easily give up on the pursuit of that, and really, in some sense, just put ourselves in a position of trying to wait it out. Find that one of the more startling things, how that uh, that wave of disappointment that overtakes us when over and over again we're unable to manage it, uh, also begins to stifle our willingness to do it, because we don't want to risk the activation of the disappointment, and we haven't succeeded in finding enough meaning to override that. If you're good at finding meaning, and you pursue it, and you gather quite a bit of it, yes, that a pool of disappointment that gathers over a lifetime is present, but the reward is makes it easier for you to overcome it and to make the risks that you need to in order to discover what matters. And if you don't succeed in discovering the things that matter, then the risk of activating that well of disappointment becomes too much. And so you begin to reduce the stimuli that might activate that disappointment, and withdraw from seeking it. One of the things about the human condition, of course, is that uh, you need that attachment community that can catch you and help you emotionally regulate, but you also need to leave them and go out and discover the things that you need to know. Uh, and that if you don't go out and discover the things that you need to know, there's a despair that arises from it. It's not that you can hide out and just avoid all of this. The despair seeps in through the windows and the doors and gets you. Uh, there's no, that's this human condition that we have, that we deal with. Of course, youthful exploration is different than adult exploration, or old age, or old age, because of the human condition that we're in, this aging body, the diminishment of your capacities over time. Culturally, of course, you have the first 10 years of life, which is childhood, and then you have the adolescent period, which is, let's say, 10 to 20. It's uh, with all of the hormones in chicken. uh, Puberty is much earlier than it used to be, at least for females, and then that process of the brain maturing and the capacity to think, and that really activates that capacity to explore, and then you hit that youthful stride, let's call that 20 to 30. And that's really this period of trying things, of just exploring in a broad swath to begin to understand what's actually meaningful to you, with an emerging adult cognitive capacity, really, which that the beginning of puberty all the way into your mid 20s is how long it takes to develop that cognitive mind. And then when you're 30 or so, there's a big change in the amount of physical energy that you have. And so you have to reorient towards that. And you come out of this growth period, this youthful growth period, into the beginning of aging, which is late 20s into early 30s, somewhere in there, depending on your body. So there's a reduction in energy, a reduction in capacities there, and then that 30s period in our culture is really positioning yourself for the big sprint of the adult world, which starts at 40. So you're maneuvering yourself so that you're in a position for the big run up in pursuit of the gold ring. In your 40s, there's a cognitive decline that happens, and mid 40s, and then another one in your 60s. But at about the physical body in the 50s also has a big decline in energy around there. How far can you get in your pursuit for the gold ring on the carousel of our culture before you can no longer compete with younger people who are coming up behind you? Um, and then can you reorient when you hit your mid 50s toward old age, which starts then? I know we like to think that 65 is better, or the bean counters wanting to move it to 70 or 72. It's still biologically based in the body, which has not adjusted to our culture or our economy. uh, and we shouldn't really we be going the other way, that we can retire and take Social Security at 55 so that we have some time to enjoy it. Of course, where can you live on Social Security except in a tent on the sidewalk, which is what people are doing. My lament about uh, the values of our culture. Um, if you find yourself in an insecure, disorganized attachment strategy, then you're going to fit into the employment world, and it's going to shape the way that you have access to pursuing primary exploration. And so, one of the reasons that you would consider changing that attachment strategy is so that you had a greater capacity to move in the directions of things that are meaningful, and at the same time being able to support those qualities of life that we need: food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. In dismissing adults, really, the capacity to explore is there, but the capacity for authentic expression is quite limited, and the pursuit of primary meaning is also quite limited. And so the strategy there is to really move toward that secret chamber where things that are authentically important to you are kept and reserved from expression, and beginning the process of expressing them, and then orientating yourself less toward the resources for transacting the care that you need, and moving into a willingness to participate in collaborative relationships where there's a fair exchange. One of the things about dismissing people is they insist on an unfair exchange. Uh, resources or care. The thing about dismissing people is that if you can explore enough to see that actually is a better way to go, it's easy to shift into it, or easier to shift into it because you really have all of the prerequisite skills that you would need to move into a collaborative relationship. You can explore, you can mentalize pretty good, you can see values, you can understand what works for you. There's going to be a need to reactivate the attachment system actually to form relationships, and a need to activate conscious awareness of your emotional life so that you can begin to understand your experience of relationships in a way that isn't really possible when you don't allow yourself to feel anything. That emotional piece also, when you reactivate it, reactivates the empathetic capacity so that you can actually feel into other people and understand better how to respond to them. Preoccupied people, the main challenge there is that the exploration system has been interfered with by the caregivers. And so you're going to need to develop a capacity to explore so that you can begin to understand what is actually meaningful. You're going to need to pull back from merging with other people and attending to them, and discovering yourself and beginning to attend to what your own needs are. And then exploring how you would satisfy them. Preoccupied people often operate in a pretend space, and so that touching into what is really authentic for you and taking the risk of expressing it to someone else is important. And this is probably the hardest part of that. You're so used to and have always succeeded in getting the things that you need by pretending to be who the other person wanted you to be. And in childhood, who you really were, that authentic expression, was so undervalued that we create this working model of ourselves where our authentic expression is way undervalued, that we need to begin to come forward with the authentic expression of what it is that we're thinking and feeling, and paying attention to whether people value that rather than doing the dance of being who somebody else wants us to be. And in doing that, uh, discover who we are and what matters to us so that we can then actually move in the direction of meaning. Disorganized people, the main obstacle to succeeding in the balance between the primary and secondary exploration is the inability to be reliable in relationships, either work or personal. And so the first big shift there is that you have to begin to do what you say you're going to do and not do what you say you're not going to do. Often because of the difficult circumstances of childhood, so of people who grow up to be disorganized, there is the passivity and the acquiescence of going along with whatever is imposed on you, but inwardly no intention to follow through with anything that you say. And so you have to move those into alignment. Uh, the avoiding of conflict by acquiescing is very typical of the way that disorganized people operate. But because there's no inward commitment to follow through on the acquiescence in any way, unless there's something compelling you, that really results in this lack of reliability. And in the workplace, what ends up happening is you don't advance. And as you age and you don't advance, you don't develop the experience that you would need to really succeed. And that truncates everything, really. the the characteristics in terms of the pursuit of primary or secondary meaning in disorganized people is often a lot of beginnings, some middles, but almost no finishes, and sometimes even really good beginnings, but uh, without being able to sustain and follow through on the pursuit of goals, they fall away one after the other. And then you get so far behind everyone else in your peer group that at a certain point you can't really catch up much. So the sooner that you attend to it, probably the better. But we do all have to start from where we are, recognizing what it is and then moving forward. There is at no point in life in this human container that we have that you can't orient toward primary exploration and the pursuit of meaning. You might get to a place where your career opportunities in the business world are truncated because of past history, but that doesn't mean that at any point you can reorient toward an exploration of things that are meaningful and allow that to really shape how you move through the world. The understanding, really, of course, is that uh, we form a secure base for exploration, which is the relationships that we have. And those relationships are both receiving of us and encouraging us to go out and explore. And the movement in between isn't restricted. You can come into the group and receive the care and encouragement and interest in what your exploration is, and then go out and explore, and the separations are allowed. You do have the responsibility, of course, of caring for the people that make up your secure base and providing that same service for them. It isn't that a transactional thing that is in one direction only, and it isn't that trauma bonding where the relationships are quite volatile. There's a steadiness to that, and really looking at it from the point of view of uh, adapting the secondary exploration so it's adequately supporting of the primary exploration and not uh, flopping in the other direction where the secondary exploration consumes everything and there isn't much left for the primary exploration. Uh, in that ideal sense, we then have to plop it into the cultural container that we have, which is completely unfair and inequitable and uh, still look for some way in which we might balance that more in favor of that relationship. This is what we do to support ourselves, and this is the thing that derives meaning for us. Is that making sense? So, what do you say we do a little bit of meditation? Would you like to do insight or heart practice? We've just had this long conversation about exploration. Yeah, well, thank you for exploring. So we'll do some insight practice. Go ahead and settle in. All right, let go of the meditation. How's that, Christian?
Do I have a question? In the simple see here feel, um, I had like I definitely had a like feel in and feel out at the same time, and they were kind of in different parts of my body. So in the simple version, not the focus in, focus out, um, would you would you recommend just kind of trying to hold both, or like what's the particular technique for that?
This is the zoom in, zoom out question. You can zoom out and hold the whole space, or you could zoom into one, depending on what you wanted to do.
Okay.
It's harder to hold a bigger space. So if your concentration is really good and you can hold the big space, that's excellent. But if you find that attempting to hold the big space causes your concentration to lag, then it's better to zoom in.
Okay. I just I zoomed out and kind of just went into focus in, focus out so that I could kind of differentiate both, but I wasn't sure if I should really just stick into the zooming in if I'm not doing that technique yet.
Um, so it's Karnika Samadhi. Karnika Samadhi is that momentary high concentration, and it's usually easier to achieve that on a small object than a big one. So that's also part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is just kind of a general question that really just kind of came up for me that I was curious about. Just for me, as someone who doesn't have the see aspect and I just have the hear and feel, I was
Uh-huh.
just kind of curious in general what the see in aspect looks like for people who have that.
So generally speaking, there are five aspects of that. The first is the mental screen where you see imagery associated with thinking. So for people, it's sort of centered around the eyes, in front of, slightly behind the eyes. Is that an experience that you have?
No,
Okay. And then there's the aspect of the position of the body in its current location in visual space, which is really also linked into the physical space, but often there's an imagery action to the way that the body is positioned. Do you have that one?
no, I don't have anything like associated with any sort of images because I've never been able to see images. So in
Right.
general, like
How
I
do
can't
you,
associate.
right. How do you know how the body is positioned?
Just kind of by, I guess, being able to feel like that my back is a little curved. I can kind of feel like the curve in the back
Uh,
or that the leg is straight kind of thing.
and okay. Um, then the third aspect is the body's location in the current environment, and that usually is a kind of after image. You might not have that one either because of the ability to see out. Um,
Mhm.
how do you have a sense of how the body is located in the environment that you're in?
Just kind of feeling what's around me and having the context of like the layout of the room and the layout of the bed and knowing where I am, like being able to feel like right now I can feel that I'm close to some pillows and there's a wall a little further to my right that I can feel kind of thing. And so then I can kind of be able to tell, okay, then this is going to be more to my left based on this
And is
position.
there any aspect of auditory that fits into that?
Um, Depends if there are things like that I can hear in the current moment that would give me more context.
Um, the next one is the image reaction to sensation in the body. Uh, so, for instance, if I have a sensation in the bottom of my foot, I see my foot in a sneaker. I'm wearing sneakers.
Interesting.
Anything like
Yeah.
that? Again,
I
that's
can kind
part.
of draw my attention to like how it feels, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, like I could feel, for instance, like using the foot, like I could feel, that the foot is bare because I don't feel anything like beneath it weighing it down kind of thing.
Right. And then the other one is the image reaction to external sound. So when you hear external sound and you go through the process of discerning what it is, how does that happen? If you hear a bird, for instance, how do you know it's a bird?
Uh, People told me when I was a lot younger that
That's how we all learned what. um, so that it's mainly a sound for you.
yeah.
So I'm going to guess that a lot of the stuff that sighted people have in terms of visual reference, you have referenced it in a different way.
Mhm.
And so in this, you're probably not going to get much in terms of sight space,
Yeah, that
internal
makes
or
sense.
external. Yeah.
That was just really interesting to me to see like how the sighted people do it because my world is like so far removed from that. Then when you're talking about image reactions, I'm like, oh, mind blown.
Yeah. Uh, the proprioceptive system for seeing people is really this balance between how the body appears in visual space internally and how it's positioned. One of the things about that is it's fluid, right? So that, and this would be something interesting for you because you're still going to be able to sense PT or energy in the system. So when the way that you know how the body is positioned is affected by PT, it's going to distort out of its normal way of your normal way of knowing it. It would be interesting to uh, have you explain how that happens if you have the experience of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to kind of tap more into that, I think, and really see kind of what that's like for me. Cause yeah.
Because I know for myself, when it really gets going, I'm a pair with 5 bumps. That's how it the body appears to me in the proprioceptive system, which I think is
That's interesting.
hilarious. Then you move and the body pops right back to its original shape.
Yeah. That is really interesting.
Good. Thank you. Someone else? All right. Saturday, we're starting a level 1. If you're interested in the attachment stuff, it should be a pretty good class. And then we're going to do our level 2s in February. We'll start an addiction series coming up. Most of it's up on the website, so take a look at it. Appreciate you. I offer the teaching freely, and if you're resourced and can make a donation, I also really appreciate that. It helps support me and also the work that we're doing. There's a link on the website for that. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Bye.